The Treasurer is preparing voters for a tough budget, warning that the mining boom isn't filtering through to the rest of the economy. Wayne Swan says there'll be less tax revenue than expected, and that means cuts for some sections of the community. Political correspondent Tom Eagleton reports.
An economy the envy of the world, but mining boom Mark II comes with just one problem, according to Wayne Swan.
Boom conditions without boom revenues.
He says while mining powers ahead, other sections of the economy aren't doing so well. Spooked by the global financial crisis, consumers aren't spending, business profitability outside the mining industry is weak, and then came the summer of natural disasters. But Tony Abbott says that argument doesn't float.
It's just a complete myth that the mining boom was good for the Howard government but bad for the Gillard government.
Wayne Swan says the opposition's got blinkers on.
They want to pretend, for example, that the floods and Cyclone Yasi didn't happen. Just like they wanted to pretend that there was no such thing as a global recession.
With a deficit potentially bigger than the one forecast by Treasury in December, cuts will be deep, and medical researchers are worried they could be in line for some of the deepest.
As a cancer survivor, I understand that personally. As someone who does a lot of work with people in this area and has done for years, I understand all of that.
And he's telling voters tough budgets are tough on treasurers too.
They tend to assume that it's some cold, robotic process where we sit around and just look at numbers. Nothing could be further from the truth.
No plan as to how to deal with this debt and to bring it down. Just a sense of we should all feel sorry for him because he's got problems.
But the Treasurer is not the only one pleading poor. The coal industry is forecasting it'll lose $18 billion over 10 years when the carbon tax is introduced, and it's criticising the government for handing back more than half the money it'll raise from the tax to low and middle income households.
This puts them in a straitjacket. They have very little resources left to deal with the competitiveness and other issues that the introduction of a measure like this will raise.
But the government, he says, is refusing to budge.
I think the business community have found it hard going. I don't think they feel they're particularly being listened to.
But as the Prime Minister takes off on her tour of Asia and the United Kingdom, she's found a pen pal in one business leader, Business Council of Australia President Graham Bradley, who recently wrote to her that Australia's policy should recognise that since we account for just 1.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions, reductions in Australian emissions will have very limited consequences for global greenhouse gas levels.
Yes, slightly surprising that the Business Council doesn't quite seem to be in the same cart they were in for pricing carbon last time.
The Prime Minister wrote back demanding to know if the Council's position had indeed changed, and tonight Graham Bradley replied in another letter saying the BCA will support policies to reduce Australia's greenhouse gas emissions where the environmental benefit is clear and the competitiveness of Australia's exporters is not diminished in the absence of a transparent carbon price by competitors. Not exactly a yes, not exactly a no. Tom Eagleton, Late Line.